천만년화s, but then I'm now focusing on Korean 천만년화s. And Korean 천만년화s are much more than non-Korean 천만년화s in Korea. So basically, Korean film market is very, very national and domestic. So Korean people go to see Korean movies more than Hollywood movies. It is almost like an average rate of one per year. So almost every year we have around one 천만년화. And given this consistent productivity, it is worth tracing their shared tendency as a distinct mentality of Korean cinema. So there may be some deep reasons why such films are popular among Korean people, not just because they are well made and then fun to watch, but also there are some meanings that are connected to Korean people's mind, and that's what I want to talk about. Okay, so let's briefly. Okay, please better. Briefly look at a recent 천만년화 that I should this way.
Amazing movie.
Oh, do you know?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. A recent 천만년화, 12/12 today. Here, after the dictatorial president Park Chung-hee, you may know. Okay, so his assassination in 1979, security commander Jeong Du-kwang, referring to the next autocratic president Jeong Du-hwan, and his minions stage a coup to seize power. But Lee Tae-shin, a stubborn head of the capital garrison command, fights against Jeong Du-kwang to keep true to his military duty and protect the nation from the evil. The conflict between the two leaders grows until Jeong's victory signals the return of a military dictatorship in the 1980s, blocking the arrival of democracy named Spring in Seoul, which is actually the Korean title of the film, 서울의 봄. Okay, so this is Jeong Du-kwang. So based on the real history, who is referring to Jeong Du-hwan, the dictator in the 1980s, and then this is the Tae-shin who wants to, block this coup in vain. Okay, let's briefly look at the trailer.
My favorite actor, Seung-hoon.
Yeah.
So amazing. So.
It seems like let's go back. There should be a link here. Okay. It's a problem. Can I go to YouTube? Yeah.
No.
Let me.
Stop sharing the red. Yes, that one, and then go down. Yes, there.
Could you go to YouTube, please? Oh. Can I type here too? And then we work together very well.
Yes.
큰 누군가가 자기를 믿어주길 바란다니까. 지금 수학이라고 좀 하면 이제 자기야. 그리고 이왕이면 혁명이라는 런칭이 가는 거 보죠. 믿으시게 하겠습니다. 아이고 이장군님, 이들 어려운 시국에 서로 같은 편하면 대한민국은 다 같은 편입니다. 와, 그렇습니다. 원상 맛이야. 방송에 살아왔습니다. 대한민국 사람은 땡기면 안 되옵니다. 오늘 저는 그렇게 생각합니다. 그런 안경을 가는데 시험을 쓰고 있습니다. 저희가 기억을 보고 있습니다. 즉시 전쟁이다. 그래서 먼저 서울 소비병이가 지휘인가에 가려있다. 어떻게 시험을 연구하죠? 실패하면 아니요 성공하면 형.
Okay. So obviously, Dong Du-kwang justifies his extrajudicial coup in the name of national security during the state of emergency. In contrast, Lee Tae-shin stays on the side of the existing law, but more precisely on the side of a proper law-governed state yet to be established. That's good. I think I can use this one. Okay, great. So, in this situation, while Dong Du-kwang's his ambition to become a new father of Korea has instead made him a bad father figure who committed atrocities like the Gwangju massacre. Are you familiar? Lee Tae-shin's aspiration to build a normal, humane, modern nation like a good father remains a historical idea that has demanded too much sacrifice to realize and has been too vulnerable to keep realized until so far, so to some extent. Here lies a double paradox. 1212 today revisits Korea's past, which persists in the present and reimagines a future that has not yet arrived. The film thus provides another example of what I call the popular Korean cinema as an unfinished modern nation or state building project, which characterizes almost every Korean 천만 영화. Okay? So this is the basic concept here. Even the fantasy film series, along with the gods, spotlights the unjust victimization of individuals by state power. When a subordinate in the army accidentally shoots the protagonist's brother, he is buried alive and labeled a deserter by his superiors, who try to cover up the incident while he is still alive. This tragedy makes him a demon, and his subordinate attempts suicide out of guilt. His mute mother, who doesn't believe her son's desertion, is thrown out for protesting to his superiors. Enraged, he goes on a rampage, overturning the army. So this is basically supernatural fantasy film. But then the drama itself is very realistic, based on Korean reality. The army. His grudge, which cannot let him rest in peace, cannot leave him dead when he is dead. He intervenes in reality, driven by a spirit of revenge. And this is like the actual, how can I say, love for this character. This ghost that disturbs the world of the living and that of the dead. Okay? Is no different from what is called the abject, neither a living subject nor a mere object. The abject blurs the boundary of life and death while wandering between them. Okay, so I'd like to introduce this concept now more in detail. In psychoanalysis, the abject, this word, means something repulsive, threatening, unnecessary, or foreign that the subject shuns, which means avoids and then repels, as a means of self-formation and self-protection. From vomit and secretions to dripping blood or severed body parts, the abject is dirty, disgusting, frightening, and horrifying. A corpse that has just died indicates the entire body as abject, losing its subjectivity, but not yet reduced to an objective thing like this object, normal object. Okay? So the living dead or undead, like ghosts, persist in the abject state, okay? Attack living subjects or refuse to be entirely dead until their unjust deaths are resolved. The outcry of the abject or the return of the repressed, this is the concept, okay, is the core of the horror genre. So basically, why do we have so many ghosts, vampires, zombies in horror films because they are already abject between life and death. They are dead, but not completely dead, okay? Because they want to go back to reality, threatening people. In many cases, especially in Korean and Asian horror films, they don't just destroy things, but they actually want to be heard. Because I died, very unfairly. Please listen to me. Otherwise, I cannot go to hell. And that's their message, okay? So this is the concept of the return of the repressed, which means in reality they were repressed, but then they still want to express their own kind of desire and so on and so forth, okay? So basically, this concept was coined by Julia Kristeva, a very famous psychoanalyst in France. But then this concept is now used in film studies as well as in sociology and politics and so on and so forth. And that's why I want to use this concept in this way. Let's move on. Along with the gods, foregrounds an ambiguous abject space-time, a limbo between life and death, in which everyone dead is on trial to determine whether they will be reincarnated or go to hell. Here, the abject character produced by state power appears as a typically Korean ghost, rarely seen in Western horror, interjecting Korean reality into fantasy. An underworld guardian even reveals the fascistic military culture, the selfish power mongers, and their dehumanization by soldiers, dehumanization of soldiers by depriving them of human rights and civic subjectivity extrajudicially. This abjection is produced by power acting directly on the body, that is biopower. So this is another important concept, biopower over life and death, prior to any institutionalized political systems like voting and Congress and so on and so forth. Okay, and this is a fundamental power, and when it is exercised in a state of exception beyond the legal process, the subject is reduced to a biopolitical abject, a bare life, like an animal whose killing is allowed outside the law and is thus not considered a punishable crime. And this concept is based on Giorgio Agamben, is very famous Italian biopolitical philosopher, whose book on Homo sacer, whatever, Homo sacer, itself is exactly about this bare life. And when it comes to bare life, it's a sovereign power and the bare life. Bare life means that your normal human subjectivity itself is kind of abjected so that you are nothing but an animal, like a naked body and nothing else. So that killing, we can kill animals without feeling guilty in many cases or without being punished, right? Just like that. So the humans are dehumanized into this abject state of being, which is like a bare life. Then you can kill it, outside the law. And basically, the coup, any sort of extrajudicial state power, itself is using this kind of biopower, making normal people abject. This happened to Korea. This happened to Argentina, as you may know, in the same period around 1980. Okay, so you have dirty war, right? Was the La Guerra Sucia? Okay, it's basically about this biopolitical abjection of even normal people, not soldiers, but normal civilians, have deprived of their subjectivity, being abject. Okay, so something like that is in some sense very universal, and then that is related to this biopolitical concept. So here, however, it is crucial that the abject ghost in the movie, along with the gods, stop seeking revenge using supernatural powers when the destructive consequences escalate. He then appears in his mother's dream as a judge here. So this is actually a demon in the kind of limbo state between life and death, and he wants to make a revenge on the army, who kind of abjected him. But then he also sees how his supernatural power is destructive, so that he kind of recognizes that, oh, this revenge is not the answer, it's not the solution. So then, at one point, he appears his mother's dream, in which he appears as like a judge. So this is very important in my case. His mother's dream as a judge, a dream, which means becoming a judge, he never fulfilled in real life. And he tells her that he will judge the wicked such as his superior who abandoned him in the army, at least in the afterlife. Okay? So when the very superior is dead, then I will be, judged in the afterlife so that he can be punished, even if not in reality. That is his idea. And the absent in this case, who has been retaliating with the same supralegal violence against the powers that made him the abject, using his own supernatural power, is now trying to sublimate his direct revenge into a legal punishment. So that's why he appears as a judge. So not just like, I want to kill you because you are harmful to me, but now I want to make a court in which I use the law in order to judge your like a bad behavior and something like that. Why do we need this kind of turn into law? And then that is very important in Korean film. Now trying to sublimate his direct revenge into legal punishment. This ending suggests the original function of a law. Just as in the state of nature, where violence easily provokes responding violence, private vengeance can trigger a vicious cycle of revenge, right? So if you go outside the law and then want to, take revenge on somebody directly, then that party also wants to do the same thing to you. So it's like a vicious cycle of retaliation, escalating violence only. There is no like a peace in this case, okay? So in order to stop this vicious cycle, you need the law, and then that is the original function of law, basically, which means the prohibition of private vengeance, subjective justice. Justice must be objective, not private. So that kind of thing itself is related to the function of the law. The law is a social big other, so it's like another psychoanalytic term, but it means that big other means like a society or the general order of things in our community as that they do. Social big other that publicly mediates and mitigates private vengeance to prevent that vicious cycle. As an objective measure of justice, the law is vested in a disinterested institutional third party beyond the emotional dialogue one-on-one. Okay? The film stages a courtroom drama of crime and punishment, with the defense attorney of the abject playing the role of a god who, on behalf of the dysfunctional real-world judicial system, saves and resurrects the lives of the unjustly dead from virtual hell. A normal constitutional state then emerges like a dreamy utopia. So this is a fantasy film in which, in a fantastic way, certain law as a proper justice system is achieved, which is not available in our actual reality, in which the guy is dead unfairly. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is the way, it's kind of the function of popular cinema, There are a lot of real problems in our world. They cannot be solved immediately. But then fictionally, they want to suggest a certain way of handling them, okay? So, and sometimes, it kind of appeals to people's unconscious desire. We need such a proper law, which is not always available in our reality. And then cinema struggles, okay? So that's why it's basically speaking. So this is my. So, but then here, 2 points are worth noting here. First, in many Korean films, the unfairly abjected characters take private revenge, actually, on their antagonists outside the law. The thriller films by Park Chan-wook, Old Boy, and so many others, and Kim Ji-woon and then Kim Gi-duk have obsessively depicted ethical but extra-legal personal retribution against the bad fathers or powerful men. So actually, all these Korean films that are a little more kind of well-known internationally are more about private vengeance, okay? And it is done, actually, outside the law. There's no court, there's no police, okay? Directly, I want to kill you because you kept me for 50 years, and so on, as you may know. And that kind of things there. So these subjective judgments of justice often expose a distrust of public authority and its limitations, frequently descending into a closed circuit of revenge bloodbaths, okay, far removed from the social order of political communities. But otherwise, the abject sons embody the Oedipal desire of patricide and driving it to some vengeful anarchic ethics outside the symbolic order. So in many cases, so everybody knows Old Boy, right? Let's see Old Su as a son, full of the desire to kill his father figure who captivated him for 15 years, okay? So we can see this kind of Oedipal drama in the sense that the son always wants to kill the bad father figure, as I see in other film. But then the difference between 12-12 today and Old Boy is that Old Boy goes directly into private vengeance, and it is done, right? It is achieved. He finally kills the guy. I mean, he doesn't kill, the captor, but the captor himself kills himself, okay? And as if the revenge is achieved. But then the thing is that once your revenge is achieved, what do you feel actually? And then is the film happy ending? It's not, right? It poses more questions about the nature of revenge and its potential limitations as well. And it's full of questions and no answers, actually. Okay? And in that sense, this film is much deeper than the popular Korean film, like 천만영화. But then the difference is that the popular Korean film has its own function, you know what I mean? It, in some sense, at least shows some ideal kind of a social state in which law functions well and so on and so forth. Okay? So I don't have to take direct revenge on the bad people, bad person, bad father people. And this is important aspect. Okay. As I say, however, almost all the 10 million admission movies, 천만영화, aspire to the big other, like a good father or a modern state that protects citizens' individual subjectivity. The abject sons overcome their primal Oedipus complex, not by accepting the evil father's status quo, but by rejecting it, yet recreating the imagery of an ideal father, and by extension, a proper society, or at least a better community. While this ultimate Oedipalization as normalization exposes patriarchal normativity underlying even the progressive desire for social change, it also signals that the very desire for a normal community, society, state, and nation is yet to be realized or perfected like a utopia. Okay? So the 천만영화 phenomenon is thus political, even when it does not depict political issues themselves. It resonates with the political unconscious of the public at large. So this is the list of Korean 천만영화s, and then it has another page I will show soon, like this one. So almost every 천만영화 still, in some sense, kind of aspires to achieve, this kind of ideal state. I mean, a modern, normal, political, legitimate community and something like that too, rather than going outside the law and taking revenge directly. Okay, so that's why I want to emphasize the importance of this aspect as well. Second, most 천만영화 are historical and catastrophe fantasies that experiment with the desire for a utopian state or community by projecting it into the past or into a fictional crisis. Political breakthroughs, impossible at the time of the film's production, are then often allegorized or fictionalized. Not coincidentally, 19 out of the 25 천만 Korean 영화 were conceived during conservative administrations as if to criticize them indirectly via cinematic fantasies. Do you know what I mean? Okay. So actually, when we have a bad government, there are more popular Korean 천만 영화 that in some sense imagine a better society, which is not available in reality. Does it make sense?
Yes.
That kind of thing is exactly. And retrospectively, and it's the case with the very film, 12 Today, which was seen as a foreshadow. It was made in 2023 when we have Yoon Sung-yeol as our president, who wanted to make a self-coup and that he was now impeached and then in the jail. You may know that kind of story. So today, this film was seen as a foreshadowing alert to the former president Yoon Sung-yeol's self-coup, the absurd insurrection that occurred just a year after the film's release. So its popularity unexpectedly motivated the Korean people to resist Yoon actively with clear memories of the past coup, 1980, and its traumatic consequences. And the film also made some officers and even soldiers hesitant to use violence on civilians when Yoon Sung-yeol, declared this coup. Does that make sense? So these are actual pictures that happened just on the day when he declared the self-coup. on December 3, 3 years ago, 2025. And then immediately on the same day and overnight, actually, the Congress kind of, denied the very inauguration of the kind of the emergency. And then the coup, and then what's that, the martial law, basically, okay? So, but then it was done also by people too. So a lot of citizens just got together. This is just right in front of the Congress, okay? So normal people just rush to the Congress in order to protect the congressman to, kind of declare this is bullshit, basically.
The famous speaker that.
Yeah, and you know that, okay? And it was actually like the spokesperson of the Democratic Party Korea, who was in front of the very soldiers, the pistol in this way. Yes, exactly. And she was brave enough.
Shame on you.
And after that, of course,
The congresswoman?
The speaker
That's
of
the
the party. Okay.
now this is the government party. Okay, so afternoon, we have now Lee Jae-myung as the new president who visited Argentina just last year. Okay. So Lee Jae-myung became the president because of all these events. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, this is a real news. But right after the Congress, annihilated the martial law, nonetheless, the court still has to make a decision about, its function because the president was still the president. Okay, so in order to really impeach the president and then expel him from the position, there was also an ongoing struggle for almost 4 months, until the Supreme Court made a decision. And so many people got together, in the capital city and across the whole country. Even in the winter and in January is very, very cold in Korea, up to here. So people under snow, just overnight, they stayed on the street in order to protest. Yeah, and then in some sense, it's a moving picture, which is still kind of signals, the majority of Korean people's kind of have this ongoing desire to kind of perfect the unfinished modern nation project, if you want. So that's why I wanted to characterize Korean films.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Over there it says the worst historical day in Korean democracy.
Yeah.
Don't you think the worst day would be the Wanchu massacre?
Yeah, but this is like a blurb. The propaganda.
Or maybe
The sequel, would be, I think.
I'm not sure there's a sequel.
No, that is the sequel to Gwangju.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well, yes. Yes, in some sense, yeah, because this is about the 1980 and not, not just. So this film is about the past, all these pictures are about the present.
Documentary called Run.
Called Run, yeah. You know everything about this.
I wrote that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
No, you haven't.
I cannot because I live in the States.
Yeah, okay. No, I have shorts and then I.
Let's check.
The uprising was in 1983, right? 82?
The uprising. So I'll talk about that. 1980s movement later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the first coup depicted in this film was made in 1979, and then in the 1980, there was a new military government led by Kwang, as I say, and then he killed people in Gwangju. That was the Gwangju massacre, and that was the worst kind of day in modern Korea, and so on. And then the recent Yoon Sung-yeol's coup itself is still, it was compared to this one, it's very weak, it's very, very, very tiny. We can immediately remove. But nonetheless, people struggle to resist the kind of biopolitical power. Okay. Anyway, so this is the structure, and in short, popular Korean cinema has persistently staged unfinished projects of building a modern nation. From the Admiral, so I wouldn't go into details, but then these you may have seen, some titles. The Admiral, Roaring Currents, and Masquerade set in Joseon Dynasty, through Assassination, Taegukgi, Hilmido, Order to My Father, A Taxi Driver, and The Attorney across 20th century Korea. and even to the host, Haeundae, Train to Busan, and along with the gods depicting imaginary disasters. So even fantasy films are still very realistically related to Korean societies. Okay, and that's what I wanted to say. There. The conflict is almost always dramatized as a clash between the sovereign power of modern, pre-modern father or family or state and the social abject, deprived of subjectivity, yet activated with some new agency to resist or to do something else. Okay, so 천만 영화 in this tendency takes on historical or catastrophic fantasies that project onto past or virtual states of exception to the normal law or a state of emergency. The very desire for a better alternative big order, like a good father, a utopian community, or a proper democratic constitutional nation. Okay? So as I summarize, this is the nature of Korean popular films across different genres and so on and so forth, while almost all of them somehow resonate with the kind of this desire about unfinished project of modern Korea. Okay, so now I cannot go into all these, individual films, and actually the chapter that I want to, refer to itself kind of met all these things, but then because of the time limit, I want to just focus on just a few films. Okay, among many 천만 영화s like that, I will highlight those starring Song Kang-ho, the actor. Familiar with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so he appears in many important Korean films, a well-known face of Korean cinema. And these films with him show how a typical secular father, like a naive citizen and a snobbish commoner, confronts the state by undergoing some abjection at the hands of state violence. A taxi driver, this film, helps, in which he plays the main character role, a taxi driver. He helps a German journalist cover the very Gwangju massacre in 1980. So it's actually based on the true story. And an attorney, his attorney, is also based on the true story, stands by the victims of a Burim incident. It's how can I say, again, it's like a guerra sucio, okay? So the military government wants to torture, arrest, and then even kill, especially activist students or dissident people and so on and so forth. And that kind of thing is depicted here too. And then thereby becoming political agents against the 1980s military extrajudicial regime. And you may know the attorney itself is modeled after the former president Roh Moo-hyun, who was kind of the most liberal and progressive president from 2003 to 2008. Okay. And he was actually a lawyer, an attorney in the 1980s.
Yes.
At the beginning, he was just like a poor guy who became a lawyer. So he wanted to just make money, with his job and so on and so forth.
So it's a true story.
Yeah, it's a true story. But then he once happened to defend student activists who were tortured. Okay, and he sees how this brutal state of violence is dangerous, and he wanted to turn into, in some sense, like a freedom fight. Okay, so that is the story. Okay, let me go on. So here another YouTube. So I want to show a trailer of the taxi driver. As I say, this is about a real taxi driver who carried a German journalist into Gwangju when the atrocities happened. And this is, well, I found the Spanish subtitle version, but then since you can understand English, maybe just go. Yes.
This is a sad movie.
Maybe Spanish.
You don't make me cry.
Not Korean.
You have to sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Korean. Yeah. Great. Okay, this one?
No, it's not drama. It's not drama. It's film. Korean film. I'm sorry. Let me see. Trailer. Oh no, sorry. Okay.
Like this one? Yeah.
But that's it.
Excellent. Movie clip.
It's a movie clip, it's not a trailer.
Oh, no,
It's one, it's one.
Yeah,
So, in both films, the main character, played by Song-ho, like makes a change, okay? He undergoes a certain change in his life because he was not interested in politics at all. But then he sees something, then it kind of motivates him to become active. Okay, that's important. So this shift from critique of anti-government demonstrators to a freedom fighter, like the protesters, is also an adventure that crosses the threshold of familism. Setting aside the daughter or wife waiting for him, the father figure in both films become a public spokesperson and an enemy of the state. However, this is not a family disengagement, as he encounters other people oppressed under the trinity of father, family, state, and feels familiar solidarity and responsibility for the abject, those who have been deprived of political agency by the state. His ethical indebtedness to the passenger he feels he must carry regardless of money to Gwangju, and to the tortured son of a housekeeper to whom he owes money compels him to commit himself to an alternative familiar community beyond the blood ties. So in The Taxi Driver, he carries the journalist to Gwangju. In The Attorney, so one of the students he defends himself is the son of a store owner, like a restaurant owner, to whom he kind of owes a lot of money because when he was poor, he was not even able to pay food and so on and so forth. So he was kind of ethically indebted to those people, so that he wanted to somehow repay his ethical debt by actively defending them and then fighting for them, and that kind of thing.
Sorry, that movie is based on the story of the guy who became a president, 98.
So this one, The Attorney, as I say, No Moo-hyun, that is the No Moo-hyun.
Who became a president.
Yes.
Then committed suicide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is No Moo-hyun. Yeah. So when in the 1980s, he was a lawyer like that, and then throughout the whole 80s, political period, he became more and more engaged in politics, and he became a congressman, and later became the president.
Wow.
And so that's what I wanted to say. Where is it? So his identical, I think it says so this community emerges like a commonsensical yet absent utopia in the attorney's declaration that the state is the people. He says something like that. The state is people, not is owned by the military government, blah blah. reappropriating sovereignty from the existing state. So I will show this actually trailer as well. The attorney. Could you go to the YouTube again?
Where's
Yeah. So I'll type. Later. Oh yes, yes, that's one.
No.
내 무대, 내 상고 출신, 오늘 있습니다. 내가 이 한국 모습 어떻게 나오는 거지, 나이가? 이게 좀 다. 이런 게 있습니다. 이런 문제는 우리가 병원에 가겠습니다. 말씀드리겠습니다. 제가 지금 병원하겠다. 오늘 우리 선배님은 이 편한 인생 이걸로서 참기를 포기합니다. 자기 포기합니다. 최소한 지금만 더 문제가 없습니다. 문제는 문제 판결 받아내야 그게 내 일입니다. 대한민국 주권은 국민에 있고 모든 권력은 국민을 얻는다. 국가는 국민이다.
Okay. So family and state are redefined and expanded into a modern constitutional democratic republic in both films. The unseen horrors of the massacre and the unheard words of torture victims, that is the gaze and the voice of the abject, thus enter the public sphere of media and then the legal space of the courtroom, demanding a reconfiguration of the existing systems that define communities and their political actors. Of course, actual events, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. The actual events are often fantasized, as in the chase at the end of a taxi driver, but the sacrificial solidarity of the abject, the crazed taxi drivers who blow themselves up in the army's pursuit to get the protagonist away, resonates with the sacrificial solidarity of civil society in the final scene of The Attorney here, where numerous defense lawyers appear in court for the protagonist who was arrested for leading a memorial march for Park Jong-chul, a student martyr whose death by torture ignited the June uprising, well depicted in the film 1987. 1987 is another important film, and that is at the actual year of democratization of Korea, moving away from military dictatorship. Which fell short of joining the 10 million admission club. Anyway, these are the two films related to each other around the 1980s there. By extension, Bong Joon-ho's sci-fi film, The Host, have you seen?
Yes.
Okay. Can also be seen as a historical fantasy that allegorizes the 1980s. So even though this is a monster sci-fi, it's, for me, a period film. It's like about history. How? So it is important to notice it. The monster born from toxic chemicals dumped over by the American military represents both, first, the preposterous authority of the military dictatorship and its big brother, that is Korean governmental authority subjugated by the neo-colonialist US. And so like that, the monster is very powerful. It's like the military government combined by the colonial US. That is monster. But at the same time, the monster also symbolizes the enemy outside, the the enemy outside pointed out as the host of virus, which is non-existent. That's why it's called the host of virus. But then viruses don't exist actually. So it's like a fake host in some sense. Then why the government wants to call it the host of viruses? And this is an important question, okay? So in that case, but still effective. This is fake, but nonetheless, it works for people because people are scared. The government say this is the host virus, and then they are panicked. This effect itself is important for the state control of citizens, like North Korea, whose threat virtually unrealizable, enables the South Korean government to reign in terror and routinize a state of exception. You know what I mean? Okay. So actually, if you go to the DMZ next week in Korea, if you successfully going there, you see North Korea there. But the absolute majority of South Korean people, North Korea's threat itself is very virtual. It's only on the media and not in our daily life. You know what I mean? We don't kind of feel like worried or something like that too. You are more worried about North Korea than we are. Actually, you know what I mean? It's like that. But historically, North Korea itself, the existence of North Korea itself is always kind of taken advantage by the military South Korean government, saying this is the enemy of the state, follow us, otherwise you are the enemy itself. And this is exactly what happened to Argentina when, you are under the military government, If you don't follow me, you are communist, you are distant, Basically, you are Peronist and whatever, okay? So then you are tortured, jailed, thrown into the sea without name and so on and so forth. And there was a military, the activist struggle like that. So exactly the same thing happened here too. So in some sense, the monster is like that, Monster on one hand symbolizes the very state power, combined by the US power. On the other hand, it's almost like the enemy outside the state, you know what I mean? It's just like North Korea. It's almost like when the US declares the war on Iraq, the base was that Iraq has mass destructive weapons, okay, which didn't exist. But then it's like a fake enemy created in order for the US to reign in terror. Since this is a war on terror, if you don't follow me, you are terrorists. And then the very use of like extrajudicial violence is justified, okay? So it's the same biopolitical mechanism continues, and this is even reflected in this sci-fi monster movie, even if it's not about just like a normal politics. That's my point. So in this case, you can understand a lot of things. Can we see this YouTube clip? And this is not a trailer. I want to show it as like a background while I talk continuously. So I will type here. The post probably.
Trailer and try.
Not right. Could you go ahead? Yes, climax. Let me start.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this one, yeah. You volume down.
Where?
Volume down. So this is the climax when the family, the family here. So actually, the thing is that the host, the monster suddenly appears and he kidnaps a girl, and the girl's family members, including his father, who is played by Song-hoon, and then uncle and so on, get together in order to fight against the host. So this is like the father's brother, younger brother. He uses this. So I will read this way. In other words, yes, exactly. It is the regime itself. The host itself is the regime itself. It is the regime itself. The regime itself lives off the monstrous creature, and the people who confront these antagonistic symbiosis are a lower-class family armed with a 1980s Molotov cocktail, and later an iron pipe, which are the two weapons that actually activist students used in order to protest against the military government.
Yeah.
That's why these films about the 1980s. Yeah, exactly. It's like the representation of the 1980s in a fictional sci-fi setting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you can see a lot of how can I say, traces of the 80s in this way. But the film shows the solidarity of the abject in various ways. The family unites with the Han River homeless just appeared. Did you see that? The homeless person powers the oil, onto the monster so that she finally kills it, using this like arrow there. What is the honey promised to rescue their daughter, and then the daughter who is kidnapped by a monster, and then the very daughter, the younger abjected by the host, even takes care of an abject boy taken like her by the monster as well. After her death, her father takes the boy home and feeds him as if to adopt him, and I will show that image. But finally, this is the climactic moment. And another important thing is that the brother, using in the Molotov cocktail, throws several cocktails, okay? But he fails actually.
Yeah.
What does it suggest? Actually, 1980s student movement itself was so passionate, but nonetheless, it's not that effective. So there's some limitation of this kind of freedom fight, on the street, and they have a lot of limitations and mistakes and so on and so forth. And finally, it is killed by the girl who was somehow marginalized still in the 1980s in Korean society. Okay, and who uses the Korea is very strong in this like archery, right?
Yeah.
In Olympics, we swipe all the gold medals, but then they are girls and not boys actually. And then girls have their own power, which is not always visible, but at this decisive moment, it is the girl who kind of shuts, kicks the monster. And then the father figure appears with this iron pipe, and then he makes, the final like shot there. Okay. So this is like how can I say, reimagination of the fight against such a monstrous power by incorporating diverse classes and then types of people in Korea. And that is the idea. Okay, and then go back to slide. And I want to finally focus on the last scene of this movie. Here, yes. As I say, the girl, so this is actually, Song is the father here, and then his daughter is here. We don't see her face, but then this is monsters like, how can I say, very damp, like shelter, okay? So she's kidnapped, but then she's also kidnapped with another small kid here, okay? And actually, within this situation, of course, they don't know each other. The girl even takes care of the very younger kid, and at the end, the girl is killed while the younger kid is kind of adopted by the father figure, as if this is a new family member. Okay? And in this case, it's also typical in a lot of Korean films, especially in Bong Joon-ho's films. Feeding itself is an important motive. To feed in Korean, 먹이다, as you may know, is a dative verb, which in Korean cannot be turned into a passive form. Okay, which means instead of eating each other, that is being eaten by each other, one gives another something to eat while contingently opening this circle to others in need. Okay? The verb forms a giving relationship between abject beings, transcending the jungle law of preying and being preyed upon that governs the monster and the humans, and then the system and the abject. An alternative quasi-family based on his uncalculated gift exchange forms beyond the blood ties. Tellingly, 식구, the Korean word for family. So there are two Korean words for family. One is 가족, it's normal one. But the 가족 means actually it's based on Chinese catechism mainly. It means like a house and then tribe. So it's basically related to this old tribal traditional sense of making family. Whereas the 식구 means actually the community that shares the same food and lives together by eating together. 식구 means eating mouth, actually. So when we share food like cookies, we make a family, basically. That's why I brought this one. Okay. So this is like a Korean thing. So as far as we can share food, we are like basically an alternative family.
Yeah.
So share the same food together. This traditional notion explains through the bond between the abject who take the place of absent superheroes. So in Korean, there are no superheroes, but then all the abject people who in some sense are activated to help each other fight against the power and so on and so forth. Okay? And then redeem the sanctity of life when the right to live is threatened by sorry, the state in the state of exception. So that's why this type of eating together itself is important. And you can find also almost the same scene at the end of another Bong Joon-ho film, Okja. It's about a girl and then a very big super pig, and then they still feed each other, and the kind of thing continues. And then I'll talk about another important film that has some variation there later. Anyway, so in some sense, I need to conceptualize all these things a little. In this sense, the fathers, played by Song Kang-ho, show the capacity of the object to act, or in my terms, the archetype of abject agency. Ordinary subjects accidentally encounter supralegal violence and then act as agents in solidarity with the object, performing temporary missions like driving, defending and rescuing people. And this trajectory resonates with what I call the narrative of double deaths, which recurs across global cinema. Once characters experience abjection, which is the symbolic death that entails the loss of normal identity or community, they activate agency in pursuit of missions such as homecoming, revenge, terrorism, sacrifice, or gift giving, and finally succeed or fail in fulfilling these missions, often reaching real or physical death. And this is the double death narrative. So at the beginning, there was like a symbolic death, which is the abjection of normal subjectivity. And then nonetheless, this character does not remain just like as a passive victim, but rather it activates a new agents, in order to fulfill a kind of new mission. And then usually mission is like restoring my family community, but at the same time, sometimes it appears in the form of making gift-giving relationship, creating an alternative family, and so on and so forth, okay? And then finally, they may die or not die, but then this could be like a real death. So it's the normal, like in many cases, this is like overall narrative structure of double death, which I can find across global cinema. And based on that, I wrote actually this book. It's my previous book. It's about global cinema in general. And then I'm now focusing on global Korean cinema, and there's the setting within the same kind of conceptual framework. So what else? The activating pursuit of so abject agency in this sense restages political traumas and aspirations on the Korean screen while intensifying its biopolitical nature. I thus conceptualize these local blockbusters as global Korean cinema, one of the most vibrant platforms for critical engagement with the biopolitics and ethics shaping contemporary community and subjectivity globally. Actually, this is my first part on unfinished modern nation state building. Do we still have some time or not?
No?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Tenemos un poquito más de tiempo. Yeah.
It's okay? So the second part about the post-political self-contradiction is shorter, so I want to be a little, faster there. What?
They will go to the gym.
Oh, okay, mini break.
Mini break. 2 minutes.
Mini break.
2 minutes, okay.
Yeah. We can have. No. Infatti sì,
Bye.
Che non sentiamo che hablar.
So where we can have access to your book, outline where we find it. One, yeah.
Amazon.
Qualche cosa.
Can be delivered here, yes, I think so.
Maybe,
Yeah, or maybe there's an online version.
Yeah.
Yeah, or ebook.
Please order for your university.
Yes, we should.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, we will show you.
Ciao, Sabrina.
Library.
Ah, no, me gusta el otro. Ah, me gusta los distintos. Pensaba una cosa.
I got this in Chile. From those universities. Please make a scene.
Oh, perfect.
No?
In Spanish, it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Sí, son vamos a buscar esto. ¿Cuál es? Creo que va. ¿Lo venderán aquí? Sí, ¿sabes dónde? Yo ya estoy hecha así, ya. Es que me quedé flechada, ¿viste? Tenés varios lugares. Uno es Hawaii Market.
Gracias.
¿Dónde están ustedes?
But I cannot wait, but I can hear.
Bueno, Puerto Madero. Puerto Madero, ok. En Puerto Madero, casi pasando
Really love this cover. Who made it?
al 1400.
Okay.
Y Hawaii Market.
Hawaii
busca.
Market.
Ah, la editorial. Ah, la editorial.
Seguro que tiene.
Claro.
Esto es una locura.
Diseño Manuel Mendoel
Mendes.
Sí.
from Chile. Yeah,
Okay.
the Parasite, ¿no?
Sí.
Very good for the parasite.
Yeah.
Which I will talk about.
Sí, seguro tienes.
Tiene dos direcciones. Más o menos floresta. Les conviene. Y después el otro ahí.
Or what time should
Yo
it be?
fui al otro, Al de.
I want to have some discussion time too.
Fui al de Puerto Madero.
15 more minutes? Including discussion or?
Incluye la discusión después.
No, we can take another
10 minutes. 25 minutes.
25 minutes?
Yes, 15 minutes with the. Yeah, okay. And then 10. Or less.
So we have.
Ah, great.
From the university.
Oh, what is it? Oh my God.
It's merchandise from the university. Yeah.
Somule.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
Sí.
Yeah.
Es una marca.
That's so much our.
Esto es una locura.
Wow.
Tiene todo.
One.
Where is your name?
Yes, but in San Honorario, for example, this one is Pablo
El cine que
Oh, yeah, okay. Cada.
coreano.
What is it?
Sí, en general.
Yeah, Kang and.
Pero
Ah, ok.
cuando vimos Elder
Older.
coreano,
Ah, bueno, estudias coreano.
well, maybe in California there are. Después estudiamos inglés.
Ah, muy bien.
A practicar también inglés.
And you have a.
Espectacular.
Yes, you have a.
Bien.
Yes, no, de derecho ya estudia periodismo.
Yeah.
Pero acá,
Sí, sí, en la UNLP.
pero después
Yeah, and then I lived
estaba.
at Candy,
¿Tienen de cara?
No, no, somos.
and this one is little.
What is it?
Entonces les súper conviene, pues se pueden ir caminando. ¿No? A Constitución. Constitución se pueden ir caminando. Por. Ah, no, están un poquito más lejos.
That's,
Toman el 4.
Ajá.
Y hay los University,
Sí, vale.
National, Lab.
Sí, bueno, eso es que vamos.
Gratis.
Free Korean.
Está más cerca de Constitución.
Free public university.
It's the same.
Belgrano.
Good. Wonderful.
Entre Belgrano y
So
la
I can be a student here too for free. Yes.
cerca de la otra avenida.
Yes.
Yes.
Por ahora, ¿no?
At least for now.
Yes. And it's still Candy.
Ese está bárbaro.
Gracias.
No, pero esto es una visión total. Cosa. Basta, leyendo.
Can you resume now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I actually, as I say, have the second part, but then I will be very quick because I want to have a more discussion time. So basically, so far I wanted to talk about the general nature of global Korean cinema, especially popular, very popular films based on this concept of finished modern Asian project. But then, in comparison, the emerging shift of supralegal power from politics to the economy since the mid 2010s is quite suggestive. In Vietnam, the death of a foul play, death of a poor worker, and its cover-up are committed by a spoiled son of a jaebol. You know the jaebol? It's kind of family-owned conglomerate, and not the state. So the point is that around this time, there have been some films which were also very popular, like Cheonman Yeonghwa, in which not the state power or the political power, but the economic power uses better things. Okay, so there's some shift from politics to the economy around this time, and that is important thing. And the detective hero in this film, Veteran, even though he is rough, he investigates and lawfully arrests this super rich criminal. And then the Roundup series, this was very popular Korean film, action film series, in which Ma Dong-seok plays a very like hard body but funny, detective character. Uses his powerful fist there, which means still state power works properly. You know what I mean? The police works properly in order to like punish the criminals and so on and so forth. So the state is okay, but then evil comes from outside. And what is that? It's economy. Okay. And it is important to shift. The Roundup series has maximally commercialized in this heroic law enforcement through the comic hard-body character of Ma Dong-seok. While the state power is normal, the sovereign and the abject are reshaped as the capitalist who abuses power even biopolitically, and the have-nots who is brutally exploited and killed. Another important film, and the thieves. Even attractively depicts outlaws who are thieves, basically, like steal money, make fun of public power. These thieves are not poor losers, but experts who acquire capital outside the restraints of law and labor, while possessing the attributes required by global capitalism, such as technological skills, physical abilities, attractive bodies, and then transnational networks as well. They appear like agents who satisfy the boundaries, unrestricted neoliberal desires hidden in the public's unconscious at the risk of being caught and undergoing abjection. The allegory that the capitalist is a thief may work here, but the film does everything to turn the capitalist system into a hedonistic fantasy in which power and abjection are intertwined without taking any moral or ideological stand. So it's a little fast. The thing is that even thieves are like glamorized in this neoliberal phase of Korean global popular cinema too. Why? Because economy has a lot of power and even attractive power as well. Parasite, finally, depicts changes in the class structure in a more realistic and multi-layered way. Unlike the vicious sociopaths of the hereditary travel in Vietnam, President Ba, so the rich guy here, as you may remember, is a self-made global IT company CEO with manners, culture, and the discreet charm of the bourgeoisie. Right? His family is rich, but even nice. Rich is not evil; rich is good in this case. And he wears power with dignity, as in the scene of firing his driver and housekeeper with plausible excuses instead of physical violence. Okay, so it's not like I kill you, I kicked you out, but then could you go out of my house? You are fired. It's nice gesture. However, the very sudden exercise of this power to abject people, from their jobs, divides the classes like an uncrossable line, I'm sorry, and asserts the employee's fate as nothing but that of replaceable temporary workers. Okay, so this situation suggests the normalized state of exception. The normalized exceptional state of the precarious proletariat, namely precariat. Do you know this term? So precarious proletariat, which means in the tradition, the proletariat are just waged workers, okay, who go to the factory from 9 to 5 and then who get wages, which means it's a full-time jobs. But then these days there are more part-time jobs, as you may know, which are very precarious in terms of job security. So they can be easily hired and easily fired, and this is the current neoliberal state of economy. They are precarious with no job security in the age of digital cognitive capitalism. It characterizes the flexible labor market without a social safety net. The class structure is newly divided into the fourth industrial revolution manager, developing virtual reality devices, Mr. Bob, the rich guy, and the jobless abject, Mr. Kim's family, competing for a place to serve capital. And this is important, okay? To serve capital, which means that now the working class does not create a solidarity among themselves, but then compete with each other in order to, get some jobs set by the, upper class, and even ultimately serving the very capitalist system itself. And then this loss of solidarity itself is the loss of politics. That's why I call it post-political. Okay? So
Post-political.
Post. Recently, an extreme job. This is another 천만 영화. It's like a funny detective story, though. It shows a chicken restaurant run by undercover cops to search for a smoking gun, but it also shares the petty fantasy of success among Korea's saturated market of small business owners who used to be unemployed or retirees. Well, this is what I find in Argentina as well. There are so many small business owners on the street, small kiosks, small supermarkets, and so on and so forth.
The same is here.
Somehow similar to Korea. But in Korea, markets are very big, only hypermarkets, like big markets. But then there are a lot of small, like chicken restaurants, which are very, very popular in Korea. But everybody wants to make open a chicken restaurant. Once they are retired, they are losing their jobs and so on and so forth. So there's a high competition between chicken restaurants or some sort of trendy, products, that can be created without much skills, okay? And that is, in some sense, related to this precariousness. Anyway, more quickly, unlike the ideal forming of an alternative family, this ideology of keeping the status quo of capitalism resonates with, Jacques Ramsay's idea of the soft ethical turn of politics. So politics itself is somehow changing its nature. What is soft ethics in this case? The post-political unification of the global system in the name of human rights and multicultural respect or tolerance, which also serves the transnational capitalist markets, incorporation and consumption of diverse others. Here, respect or tolerance as a politically correct gesture implies the hierarchy between its subject and object. The subject of tolerance and the object of tolerance. Okay, and then the subject's hypocrisy towards the object. The unspoken rule that the rich should not expose their hate for the poor, even if they hate them, is the essence of human courtesy in this soft ethical society. Mr. Bach's fault lies in provoking the terror of hateful revenge by not bearing but betraying his physiological repulsion to the smell of the underground and subway. Do you remember? Mr. Park says, the poor people smells like underground and so on. Okay, and that kind of how can I say disgust? It should not be expressed openly, but then when it is exposed to those people who are actually in the underground, it creates like hate and terrorism. That's what happens at the end of this. Thus, soft ethics is only a kind smile that barely suppresses its flip side, which is the hard ethical disgust, hate, exclusion, and revenge. So these are two ethical phases of post-political globalization. So the terms are complex, but then the idea is that the political struggle, solidarity, creating new normal society and so on and so forth, somehow now is kind of, replaced by this, on one end, soft ethical tolerance, multiculturalism, on the other end, this hard ethical hate and terrorism. Okay? So this is the current state of globalization and then our society. So here, there's another clip, but then, okay, you can play and then I'll just read. Very quickly, have you seen all Parasite?
Yes.
So, down.
Oh.
No, it does not appear here.
Cavernoso, al igual que Martín. Me mató.
You can mute.
El otro día, ¿no?
Mute. So do you remember, this is like a birthday party, right? And this birthday party is apparently, as I say, very soft ethical, inclusive of all people.
Yeah.
So, all Kim's family is invited, okay? So let's celebrate our, birthday and so on and so forth, that kind of thing, okay? But then it turns into this hard ethical hate and terrorism which cannot be resolved in any political way. It's only like the killing spree, again, kind of revenge, direct outside law and so on and so forth, okay? And here, very interestingly, as you may remember, the rich guy says, so could you turn on the violins? Let's. So his daughter is dying now. So Mr. Bar calls Mr. Game to tell him to give the car keys, okay? So that he can just like escape the situation. And even in this decisive moment, what Mr.
Yes,
Bar,
that scene.
exactly, okay?
They want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thinks about himself, escape, while showing that he's disgusted by the smell of this underground fire. And this kind of very physiological, almost natural gesture itself provokes terror. And then this double ethics is like a double bind without a political exit. Be polite to avoid terrorism. In other words, parasite is political only insofar as it prompts us to reflect on the historical limits of this ethical message aimed at preventing tragic class strife. And actually, this is what Bong Joon-ho himself said, So in this situation, what would be our, kind of alternative thing we can pursue? And he says, well, we should still respect each other. But when you respect each other, at the end, it only creates this kind of hate. And so I think that what I mean is that Bong Joon-ho himself does not have any solution to this problem. Okay, but I don't criticize him because that's the artist's job. The artist is like very sensitive to problems rather than creating solutions. Anyway, he does his job in this way. But finally, I'm sorry, I should be very careful. The ultimate problem lies in the successful entanglement of film into media culture. The film's message then tends to be trivialized as it is inscribed and packaged into a cinematic event or phenomenon. The class issue in Parasite is rather diluted and ignored by those who praise the class structure as well depicted in the movie. The parasite is taken out of its diegetic world and connected with an infinitely proliferating network of memes, TMI, too much information, details about blah, blah. And then subscriptions and likes on social media. Bong Joon-ho is none other than a film author, film director, artist, who has learned to survive in this global capitalist media tech ecosystem and coexist with it, willing to be parasited by it, while also parasitizing it. You understand what I mean? So Bong Joon-ho criticized capitalist, society in a harsh way, but his message, once this film is celebrated, is somehow, taken away. And the people just celebrate how well made it is, how fun it is, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the actual system that he criticizes does not change at all. And we are like reinforcing the very system by actually celebrating this power of cinema. And this is the paradox of global cinema, global capitalism. This is a conclusion. The antagonistic mutual dependence or mutually beneficial relationship between the director and the system is formed here. The director uses the capitalist system to criticize it, and the system reappropriates this criticism while allowing it. In sum, the author, the director, and the system do not cross the line in that they respect each other's capabilities, but they transcend the line in that they can only strengthen each other's capabilities when mingling together. The traditional author as a cursed artist with an uncompromising anti-established vision is already a romantic myth. Now, the more blessings an author receives within the system, the greater power his artistic achievements gains. Parasite is not only a proud Korean film, but an epitome of global cinema, manifesting the cultural flexivity of the West-centered global capitalist system. When an artistic film about class problems can be the most commercial, the author's critical message spreads to the most people while simultaneously returning the most capital to the system. This performative self-contradiction is another keyword of the new authorism. So this is a little more about the film studies in which the director itself is author. Author is a writer, basically, it's like artist. But then currently, this kind of creative, artistic, power itself is somehow absorbed into and co-opted into this capitalist system, in which actually this kind of criticism of capitalism itself is even welcomed, so that it can be a win-win for both of them. Does it make sense? So this is like a post-political self-consideration that I want to put. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor. I don't know if someone wants to ask a question or a comment.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I found, well, of course, all the speaking was very interesting. And when you bring, I think, some concept of psychoanalysis,
Yeah.
linked with, for 100 death crime, I think, and the other one, that the figure of father, it somehow how that is linked, I think, how the figure of the parasite
Parasite. Oh, yeah.
and how this is shown in some aspects of these movies, in how characters confront with some forms of fatherhood, with the progression, and how this fight is also some kind of parasite. Some
Patricide, you mean? Patricide. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's well, you saw it that way, or this is like direct.
This is right.
This is too linear, or you have some nuances. This categorization, or somehow in your studies or the cases, always your study.
Yeah, I think that I understand what you say. So as I say, in such Korean popular films, normal characters, main characters are usually like, as I say, it's male characters, where actually women are very marginalized, unfortunately, in such popular films, where there are more and more like important films made by women these days, and the young women showing, young women as characters and so on and so forth. But then on the level of 천만영화, still the majority, the mainstream trend is that it's about a boy against the father, or a father, a good father against the bad father. So in that sense, this kind of drama consists across many films, as I described in this case. And I wanted to use the psychoanalytic term of patricide in this way, okay? So it's like a very Oedipal desire to overcome the father figure, right? But then ultimately, it means that it's not like we need to go away from any patriarchy. It's about how to make a normal patriarchy. So actually, this is the limitation of the mainstream imagination as well. So all these films, still in some sense aspire to having a proper good father figure. Yeah. And by extension, a good political community and so on and so forth, which is still normative and patriarchal. Okay, of course, it can be open more and more open to diversity and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, this is the majority Korean cinema imagination. Does it make sense?
So in nation buildings movies, there are no women.
There are a few like symptoms that's kind of slightly signals next stages. And one of them is exactly post-political stages, I say, in which, in some sense, father figures fight each other only to destroy each other. Okay. But then another thing is that, do you know Train to Busan?
Yes.
It's a zombie film, right? And actually, this is important film. And then again, it is driven by 2-3 father figures there. Okay, and then they finally even sacrifice themselves in order to save their family members. And then who are the survivors? Only women there, and only a small girl, a woman with like a baby, a pregnant baby who is a daughter. Exactly, exactly, okay?
But it's again, the only way of women are present are because of their motherhood.
Motherhood and sisterhood, if you want.
Yes.
Yeah, but then again, that kind of things are
Don't
still,
fight.
no, they just survive, signaling that probably in the future there may be some sort of, feminine community or solidarity there. But then it's like a still potential succession. At least in the mainstream movie, okay? As I say, yes.
Because it was allowed in that case, because they were pointed at them at the very end
Yeah.
of the scene. And the girl's son, just a perfect feature of Korean spirit. They sing constantly and they margin as well.
Yeah, and especially the director of Train to Busan, Seung-hoon, is very prolific, making such action films continuously. Almost at the end of each of the films, actually the women survive. It doesn't mean that he can create still like a female-centric film, but then there is some signaling there. Bong Joon-ho's other films also are related to that too. Okja especially is about a girl and then Super Pig as well.
Yeah.
And then they are the survivors there. And then it is more about empowered womanhood as well. But generally speaking, yes, so far, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, there are a few very famous movies where women fight.
But maybe not
Have you seen Lady Vengeance, for example?
Lady Vengeance is Park Chan-wook by Park Chan-wook, of course. Yeah, yes, something like that too. But yeah, so the thing is that there are many interesting films about women, even made by women, and so on and so forth. But my focus is about 천만년.
10 million.
Yeah. So that kind of barrier still indicates that the
Yes.
mainstream imagination is still somehow like patriarchal. Yeah.
Okay. That would be.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
of the end, find out this idea of global capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have these like massive movies that have a global circulation, like Parasite, for example. But nowadays, I think also with streaming, we have like a global niche format. We have like a global, but also a fragmented space of viewing. I'm thinking, for example, in Hong Sang-soo movies,
Yeah.
that they are seen worldwide, but
You're right.
they are not very massive
Right.
in the countries,
Right.
but we can see them even
Right.
in cinemas of our side.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is not also some kind of this idea of new authorism, but also in global capitalism. Even if in those movies we can show some form of alternative way of doing things.
Definitely. Well, actually, so briefly speaking, there are two ways of thinking about global cinema. Usually, as you see, global Korean cinema for you is like Park Chan-wook, Bong Joon-ho, Lee Chang-dong, and so on and so forth. Okay, more artistic films that are circulated in the festivals across the world, so that it can be seen here in Argentina, especially when there's a Cinematográficas or film festival and so on and so forth. Okay, they are of course global because based on the global circulation, you can approach them and access them. But in my study, I wanted to a little more specifically define global cinema as reflecting globalization. And the globalization in a thematic way is about, as I say, the change of politics into the double ethics of soft ethics and then hard ethics. And then a lot of films in terms of narrative show the double death, as I say. It's all about abjection and some sort of agency there and so on and so forth. Kind of revealing the contradictions of our global neoliberal society and problems and so on and so forth. So Hong Sang-soo is not like that. He has his own individual artistic work there, but then it is not related to this way of conceptualizing globalization. That's why it's a bit different. Does that make sense?
Well.
No more questions.
Questions, so thank you again. Voy a agradecer a quienes están mirando en YouTube. Y le damos otro aplauso al profesor para terminar.